NC State family, it's time for an honest look at your sports world. Let's get you hooked up for Pack Therapy, presented by First Horizon Bank. Here are your hosts, Tim Donnelly and Wolfpack legend Casey Morsell.
Welcome into Pack Therapy, the podcast. This kind of mid-January edition. I'm Tim Donnelly, my co-host Casey Morsell, NC State former guard, here along with us. And Casey, I mean, we're gonna rip the Band-Aid off. Okay,
let's do it.
How panicked? Like the panic button, right? Is it being smashed as of yet for NC State?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
And that's mainly because of the layout of the ACC. NC State is in a position where they're focused on just making a tournament now at this point. You got
which tournament are you talking about?
The ACC tournament.
That is a big distinction.
That's this is and that's what I'm referring to, the ACC tournament. And with the new format, there's a possibility that they don't make it. Mm-hmm. So they need to definitely find a way to stack in as many wins. Their next three stretch of games, the next games are coming up. The next three games is an uphill battle. So they need to find a way to pull just at least one of those off to put them in a solid position.
All right, so we ripped the Band-Aid off by saying, panic button is pressed. Now I'll give you the lay of the land, right? And I know that the State fans listening to this, right, it's Pack Therapy podcast. State fans are listening, so they're aware. But it even helps me, right, as somebody that covers the team. Sometimes you just got to say it out loud, and when you put it all together, it's like, whoa. You've lost 5 of your last 6. The only win being a 1-point win over Notre Dame. Lost your last 3-game losing streak, always tough. You have SMU coming up next, who is I wouldn't say like upper tier ACC team this year, but they're darn sure not the bottom. Then you face Duke, that's as upper tier as it gets in the conference this year. Then Clemson, they're in the second tier. It's not far-fetched to look at this schedule and think 6 straight losses, 8 of your last 9 losses. That becomes very, very harrowing when it talks about just making the ACC tournament, right? The gloriousness of college basketball is once you hit the conference tournament, you can do what you guys did last year. You can, if you don't lose, you don't stop playing, and you can go on for a month or more.
Literally.
Which you guys proved, but you have to make the ACC tournament to even have the chance to be magical. That is a level of stakes and a level of pressure that can make or break like relationships. Like you can lose friends with that kind of pressure on your shoulders.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, there's a sense of urgency that needs to take place in the program as soon as possible because, like you said, that next stretch of games, it's something it could definitely it can make things tough throughout the rest of the season in terms of not only a chemistry perspective but just a morale perspective. It can do big ththings.
Exactly, and the opposite side of it is the ACC is not stacked this year with a bunch of opportunities to big tree fall hard. If you're playing at Duke in 4 days, with 1 day rest between SMU and Duke, right? It's Saturday, January 25th, SMU at home, at Duke, January 27th. That's next Monday. You win the Duke game, everything all of a sudden, right? Things that didn't used to taste good are now delicious, and music that is now catchier. Like everything just becomes better. So there's an opportunity here. With that being said, I'm not sure this team is one that the pressure ratcheting up is something that I would assume is going to make their level of play ratchet up because so many times they've been in one-score games and haven't been able to pull it off.
I agree. And I think that's something that usually you think it takes time to figure it out. And maybe that's the case with this team. Maybe after being in multiple close games, eventually they figure out how to close them out. But when you go to a place like Cameron, when there's high energy and a tough place to win in general, that's a place where you can't beat yourself, and that's where I think NC State struggles, especially on the road.
Now, to let you in a little behind the scenes of the pod, right before we started recording this episode, Casey joined me on my afternoon show. So this is right after my afternoon show on Thursday, like as we're sitting here recording it right now. I took some notes on some things Casey Morsell said. So on the afternoon show, I said, if you want a deeper dive into Casey's thoughts on NC State, find the podcast. Hopefully some of you did just that, because I have some comments he made here that I think kind of get to the root of what State is dealing with. One, at the end of games, you said they're just not guarding at a high level. That, to me, coming from you, right, you're somebody whose reputation was you guard at a high level, so I'm going to take you as an expert on the subject. The hard part is the answering of this question. End of games, State, one-score games, they're not winning them. You throw out, they're not guarding at a high level. My question is, why not? Right? My question is, last podcast you said they had the potential to be a great defensive team. I don't see anybody with like slow feet, right?
Yeah.
Ben Middlebrooks can shuffle for a big guy. I see the pieces. Why aren't they guarding at a high level?
A variety of things. Part of it is the foul trouble. They're giving up free throws, which are basically easy baskets. And then coming out of the timeout, I see a lot of failure. Like, guys aren't locking in on scouting reports. You see towards the end of games, guys who are 40+% 3-point shooters getting open looks. Like, I don't know, even if they make it or miss it, like, they not, that can't happen towards the end of the game. So between like the fouling and the open looks that they're giving up, and then on the offensive end, it's a completely different game that they've been playing for the past 35, 36 minutes.
All right, you've hit on it because I'm sure you can see the notes across the table. Use the term hero ball, and hero ball is one of those things where it's like in football game manager, where at one point in time it might have been not like a bad word. But now if you're watching a game and the color commentator says, they're out there playing hero ball, they're not saying it like, oh, your stars are taking control, right? They're saying it like you're ignoring the better play to make yourself be the star. And I'm not saying it's that conscious, right? Because I'm not going to accuse anybody on State of, like in a huddle, like, you losers get on my back. I'm not saying that. But I do get the sense that there are 3 or 4 guys, once the ball hits their hand in a one-possession game with, minute 30 left or less, and I'm, the Jaden Taylors, the Marcus Hills, the scoring's in their DNA, but the ball doesn't get passed very often once it gets there. The hero ball, is that something you can fix? Do you go Hoosiers? Right? Hey, coming out of this timeout, we need 4 passes before we shoot. Like, how do you fix it?
I think, and this is a strong opinion of mine. I think the only way you fix it is if they're winners. If you have guys who are willing to be unselfish, put their pride aside, and not try to be the hero, that's the only way that you can fix it. There is no strategy, or there's nothing that coach could draw up, or there's no drill that you can necessarily do. It's all a mindset and a mental thing, and who's willing to put the team first at the end of the day.
So here's the way we're gonna do this. We're gonna take a quick break, but one of the things Casey said, I think was off air. So I'm bringing our like dirty laundry to the pod. Was he wishes he played for this year's NC State team. Yeah. Which part of it, every athlete wants to play for every team, let's be real. But I want to get some of that justification coming up next. Stick around, more Pack Therapy in a second. Back here on Pack Therapy, the podcast, and to make good on what we were talking about going into the break. You said you wanted to play for this year's NC State team, and the reason why I'm bringing this to the front, right? And he said that off air. The reason why I'm bringing it on air, or onto the podcast, I should say, is because I think the reasoning that you said it is kind of cool. I'm just gonna put it all out there. You can react. Yeah. Tell me if I'm online.
For sure.
He basically, right, off air, talking about his career, talking about this year's team. He was like, I would have loved to play for this year's team. My first thought goes to like greed, right? I'm like, oh, your usage rate would be through the roof, right? If DJ Horn and DJ Burns didn't have to get their bunch of shots, this guy could be scoring, a whole bunch more points. But you said like everybody gets open shots, and you made me think like you would be excited to set everybody up, right? Mm-hmm. You would be excited to get these guys open shots and kind of help in that way. And then we're talking before the break about how do you move on from hero ball. And you essentially said, well, you got to be about getting the best shot, right? If you're a winner, you're gonna be willing to pass on that. How much of that was happening last year?
What?
How much of yourself
mm-hmm.
or Michael O'Connell, right? Or we could go on and on down the list. Mo Diarra. How much of you guys understanding in late games, we start with DJ Burns, or in late games we get the ball into DJ Horn's hands, and maybe your instinct was, I can make this shot, right? Or your instinct was, maybe I shouldn't swing it. I can be the one to knock it down. But because of your awareness of what it took to win or what was best for the team, you did something else.
Yeah, I think. With last year's team, I think we really believed that we were going to get an open look at the end of the game, whether it was from DJ or we knew that if they drew two people, they were going to kick it automatically. Like it was, there wasn't any doubt. So all five players were prepared to shoot necessarily at any moment just because of the one more pass. With this year's team. Yes, I mean I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind it. I mean I don't really know the culture is like really or the chemistry. I mean all I know is just what I can see. But I think I feel like yes, this team gets a lot of open looks because I see that the defense is kind of sinking off on a lot of the guards. So from a guard perspective, guys can draw a kick and get easy shots. In my opinion. But also, just being able to help the team close games. Like, I feel like they're in a lot of dogfights, and a lot of the stuff comes on the defensive end, and that was something that I specialized in was defense.
All right, I'm fascinated by something you said there.
Yeah.
You said you don't know the culture, right? You don't know the culture. You don't know this team.
Yeah.
This is one of the most underrated parts of new college sports that I don't know if I'm ever going to understand, because I played my college football, and this is me being old next to a young guy. Transfer portal wasn't a thing, right? Players didn't leave. NIL wasn't a thing. My recruiting class was probably 25 kids, and like 17 of us were still there when I graduated, which is just insane. That never happens anymore.
Yeah.
It's a different sport, but still. And one of the stories I tell is there was a redshirt running back whose locker was next to mine my senior year, right? So my senior year, and I did this kind of intentionally, right? Seniors get a little control over the thing. Like I wanted one of the youngest guys on the team next to me so I could pass along little words of wisdom and be like the OG, right? The old head and let him know. And that way, 4 years after I left, I would still feel like, hey, I had some kind of impact on what's going on in the locker room, right? His name is Jalen Randolph. He's a great dude. I think he's going to be a politician one day because he's a leader. And I take no credit for that, but I do take credit for that. I knew, like the next year, I was not in the locker room. I was not around the players, but I knew what the culture was because it was the Delaware football culture, and it was set by people before me, and I think it would last long after me. The fact that you were on that team, like 10 months ago?
Yeah.
And you just offhand say, I don't know the culture. That has to drive a coach wild. That has to drive a coach. Like Coach Keatts has to be ripping out what he has of his hair because that is insane. Like Casey Morsell is supposed to, be in the locker room with Dennis Parker Jr. and then know, all right, cool, the locker room is good for the next couple of years. The culture is sweet. Yeah. But you don't know what the culture is. Yeah,
I mean, but in that opinion, but does it look like it though? Like it looks like they just divided, and it showed, and it's displayed when they play. Like literally, like I said, we bring up the hero ball, but like I said, I mean, from what I see, how they perform, it's not something that I'm familiar with. Even like I'm not even just talking about the scoring and the defense. It's just more like the just the vibe, the morale. I mean, we were a big laugh. And we had legit fun playing the game. Even when we lost, we were still playing music, walking out with the big speaker and everything. Like win or lose, we were still having a good time and enjoying the season. Really,
that's another personality thing. That's another See that blows my mind. So now I'm just diving into last year's team. Let's be real. Talk about last year's team is more fun than talking about this year's team. If we're just keep it a buck, as they say.
For sure.
Y'all were allowed to have music playing after losses?
So not like directly after a loss.
Okay.
So basically not directly after a loss, but I'm talking
Our
more
locker room had to be like, I don't care if you were a red shirt and never played and you've been hurt. You had to have like a frown and could not pretend to be like having headphones on after a loss.
Yeah. No, I believe it. We always play music like before we would practice. So like before we would practice, like while we're warming up, like that music was always playing and always like active, and that's something that like we all liked. After a win or loss, like we were just a big vibe team.
And did you ever consider that didn't change at all as the season went? Because we talked about this last podcast. You can go find it. Every podcast can be found. Our YouTube page, 99 on the Fan. Wherever you're listening to this now, you can just go into the archives. We talked about it, and like again to just be straight up. Yeah, you had losing streaks last year, right about this time last season, which seems crazy. You lost 3 straight games, which is exactly what this year's team has done. You lost to Virginia Tech, you lost to Virginia in overtime, and you lost to Syracuse. Yeah. Later on in the season, and I don't say this to be mean, it's just what it was.
Yeah, for sure.
You lost 4 straight games going into the ACC tournament. At no point in time did the music maybe we shouldn't play it as loud today. Like it never went back.
No, that was just who we were. Like literally, and that's why I think it all kind of like the run and everything, like everyone thought of it as like a surprise, like the boss man D-Lo and all the stuff that we were playing, but like we've been doing that all year. Like it was just it just kind of was emphasized when we started winning games.
Again, maybe that and it's you can't argue with the results because what you guys did last year was special. But I don't. That's crazy.
In my opinion, I don't know if this team is doing that. That's not what I've heard. I don't, because there's a different group, and I don't know if they really like vibe or they get going off of the free spirit flow of the music playing. So
that is worth mentioning. And as much as we talk about last year's team because you are the co-host and this year's team, Marcus Hill not a part of the run last year. These are incoming transfers and freshmen. Dontrez Styles, Brendan Huntley Hatfield, not part of the run. So it is very much a different team. But Jaden Taylor, Ben Middlebrooks, Michael O'Connell, Breon Pass, some of these there were a decent amount of guys that know how that works and could drive it in that direction if that's the way it should go.
Yeah. Part of it is just like maybe they want a different identity. They want a different image. But in terms of kind of what worked for us last year, I don't think they've found that on and off the court. I think they're still just trying to figure out and honestly, who knows when it will happen. I mean, we're heading into February. If it does happen, but it's something that they need to move with a sense of urgency because the season's winding down.
This podcast that we're recording right now is in the middle of a week off. And off's not the right word, but a week with Saturday to Saturday without a game for state. This, again, it feels football, right? It feels like a bye week.
Yeah.
Take us through what this week is like coming off 3 losses, losing 4 of your last 5, or 5 of your last 6, whatever it was. Take us through this week under Kevin Keatts' leadership as head coach.
Wow. Well, I know for sure practice is hard. I know they're practicing hard.
But you've said that it's always the case, right? Yeah. That's not like unusual that you're going to practice hard with Kevin Keatts as the coach.
Yeah. Well,
Is it harder?
I agree. I think right now it's harder than normal.
All right.
Okay. It is always challenging, but right now with the way things are going, losing 3 straight, I think they're definitely grinding as we speak, but I think they're spending a lot of time, or I know they're spending a lot of time working on closing games. So they're doing a lot of situational, close game situations in practice. Also know that they're working on defense for sure. They're working on like they're breaking it down into detail, meaning like the closeouts and all the way down to finishing the possession with a rebound. And that was something that like I think they need to definitely lock in on, is holding the team to one shot and done. When you give up second and third opportunities, which tends to happen, like these things happen at the end of the games mostly. Like a team will get an offensive rebound, they put guys on the line, they don't listen to focus on scout report.
Same things frustrate you that frustrate all of us.
They all happen towards the end of the game. So I think Keatts is definitely putting them in a lot of situational opportunities for them to practice.
How does what's the structure of these practice situations? Is it ones versus twos? Or
there's a mix. There's a mix. There's a mix, and there's a variety of different lineups because you just never know. So guys might be in foul trouble. Things can happen. A guy might have a hot hand. So you definitely mix. He mixes the lineup up, but you break. I mean, there's a variety. It's from all the way. You play a 5-minute game to a 45-second game.
So in that scenario, just so I get a better vibe of it. Obviously, you would be, let's say, with the ones, right? You're the ones that are the coaches judging.
Yeah.
Who's most likely to guard you last season in those moments? Like who's your mark? Is it someone like Breon Pass? Is that who's in there? Is it
last season? Who was most likely to guard you?
Because part of it is State needs to be better in those end of game situations.
Yeah.
And to do that, you need to practice it, which is what you're saying. But I also think you need like a fastball look. Right, you can't.
Sure.
You can't be out there like, I keep striking out on curveballs, and then someone's throwing you a 45-mile-an-hour curveball in practice, and you're like, I'm hammering it. You go to the game, they're throwing a 90-mile-an-hour curveball.
Yeah,
it's not the same. So, like, I'm wondering were you matched up with DJ Horn? Were you matched up with O'Connell, or were you matched up with somebody off the bench that isn't playing big minutes?
Good question. With NC State, 9 times out of 10, they're not guarding their original matchup, because on the defensive end, they're switching.
Okay.
So there's a lot of switches, and that causes guys to guard out of position. So therefore,
Mo Diarra was guarding you, is what you're saying.
Sometimes Mo, sometimes it was different people.
DJ wasn't holding you on the perimeter. DJ Burns.
Sometimes Horn. But they wouldn't really. I mean, depending on what the matchup is, they were switching. So that's why, it could be challenging for guys to guard out of position. Maybe that's another conversation that, you could have in terms of the defensive conversation. But, there's a variety. There's just anything could happen, because a play could cause so much confusion. And if you can't adjust to it, then, it's going to cause trouble.
So that's your way of saying it was Kevin Keatts, and you smoked him. I got you. And
for
you
sure.
Scored
for
by
sure.
Bunch.
Exactly.
That's going to do it for us here on this version of Pack Therapy. We will be back next week with more. I'm going to continue nerding out here on like basketball theory with Casey. So we'll see you next week. Have a great week, everybody.